Hello, I am Stephen Mallon, your host, and welcome back to Refractions. I am very excited that we have the founder and director of the Bronx Documentary Center, Michael Kamber, here as our guest. So, Michael, thank you very much for joining us.
Pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Did I butcher your name? It's Kamber, right?
Amber, yeah.
Okay, good. So yeah, if you could just start, can you tell us your history with photography?
Yeah, sure. I really started as a kid up in Maine. My mother was a photographer with the Maine Times for a few years in the late 1960s. So she, did sort of documentary work, photojournalism, covered issues up in Maine. And I always like to tell the story that she got into an institution for people with mental disabilities. People were chained to the floor. I mean, it was really medieval conditions, and she did a big photo essay on it that really helped to change the laws in the state of Maine. Sorry, the Bronx can be a little noisy. I hope you can hear me.
We're good.
Yeah. So as a kid, I caught the bug as a kid, and it took me a long time. I came to New York in my early 20s. I was working as a mechanic and working construction, but I would take pictures at night on the weekends, and there were a bunch of older photographers that really helped me out, and Mel Rosenthal, Ben Fernandez, a few others, and they would let me take classes for free. I didn't have any money. They'd say, "Don't worry, come to class anyway." So. A lot of these guys, there was a real community that helped me get started as a photographer. I began to freelance in my 20s. I think, like a lot of young New York photographers, I began to freelance for the Village Voice, which unfortunately is not gone, is now gone. I was a member of Impact Visuals, which was this young collective of somewhat radical photographers and journalists. And then I slowly worked my way into the New York Times as a freelancer over a period of years. And then in after 9/11, of course, everything changed. There was, for me at least, there was sort of pre 9/11 and after 9/11. And after 9/11, I was, immediately sent to Afghanistan and began to cover mostly conflict for the next up through 2012.
Wow.
Mostly for the New York Times, pretty much exclusively on contract for the New York Times. I worked in Iraq off and on for 9 years, and I was the West Africa photographer for the New York Times for a number of years, covered Haiti. So I was on the road constantly for about a decade there.
And then, how long has the documentary center been around?
We started in 2011, and it was something I wanted to transition out of being on the road. I didn't want to do any more conflict photography. And so I planned this out in really starting 2009, 2010 with Tim Hetherington, who was my roommate, my best friend. And we lived together in Brooklyn, and we worked together in, different places around the world. And unfortunately, Tim was killed in 2011, and that was really, sadly, that was like the impetus. A couple of friends came, the next day and said, you've got to start that place that you and Tim were talking about. And that became the Bronx Documentary Center. So we had, no funding, we had nothing really, but we just got some volunteers, and we got Tim's film back from Libya where he was killed. He was killed in Misrata, and we got his film back. Some of the film was literally, coated with his blood, and we developed the film, myself and Chris Anderson and a few other people, and made prints and put up our first big show. And we had talked to people about opening a photo space in the Bronx for years, and people said, "Oh, nobody will come. It will never work." We did that first opening with Tim's work, and there was a line all the way down the block. I mean, there were 300-400 people here, and it was a great tribute to Tim and to documentary photographers everywhere. And we knew immediately that it was going to work.
I did not know about your connection with Tim. Yeah,
Yeah.
I met him at a festival years ago. His brother was a twin brother, right?
He's got a twin, Victoria, his sister.
Okay,
Yeah.
twin sister. Okay.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
And his brother, his older brother Guy. But yeah, wonderful guy. If people haven't seen it, they should look at Restrepo. He made Restrepo in Afghanistan with Sebastian Younger. He did a book called Infidel. I met him in Liberia during the Civil War in 2003. He He did a book there called Long Story Bit by Bit. And he was interesting because Tim, Tim was a big influence on me, but he was interesting because he was doing some photojournalism, some straightforward documentary work. He was also breaking into the art world. He was doing gallery shows and he was doing filmmaking. He was writing articles. So he had his hands in a lot of different things.
Yeah, it was amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing person.
Yeah.
So what is the main mission for the center?
I would say our main mission is really, well, there's a couple of things that we do, but I would say our main mission is really education. We've got about 100 teenagers between the ages of 12 and 18 in our after school and summer programs. And we're teaching them basically, straightforward, relatively traditional documentary work and journalism. Got a real emphasis on journalism the past few years. And we've got a student newspaper. They do projects and reportage or photojournalism around the Bronx. Mostly, we do encourage long form work as much as we can. So they might work on a project for a few months, and we exhibit their work here. They've got the student newspaper, as I said. They'll do a big exhibition here in early June, which is open to the public, so people can check that out on our website. And then the other thing that we do with the kids, that we do a lot of travel. So we've got coming up, I think we've got a trip to Japan this year, a trip to Cuba, a trip to Mexico. I think they're going to Guatemala. So we're doing a lot of these trips, and we're partnering with other youth photo groups around the world, which has been really rewarding and really interesting. We got a lot of kids who haven't been out of the Bronx, haven't been out of New York City. So to be able to travel the world is really great. The other thing that we're doing a lot of that we never dreamed of in the beginning, but we saw the first few years that we had our education program, we saw that a lot of our students, our 17 and 18-year-olds, were not going to college. We began to get involved with that. And we help them with their financial aid, with their applications. We take them on school visits to colleges around mostly the Northeast. And we're at 100% every year. Every year, we've got 100% of our students going to college now. So that's become a big part of what we do. Again, something we never dreamed of. We just didn't realize that it wasn't being addressed in the schools. Some of the kids in our program go to wonderful schools. Others go to schools that I would say are less than wonderful, and they get no help whatsoever with, college prep and college applications. So we've stepped in on that. And the other part of what we do is, I think, in general, stepping back, we just try to help, build and be here for the photo community. So we have a lot of classes for adults. We try to keep them, reasonable, usually a few $100s, sometimes cheaper. We try not to turn people away who can't afford it. And we'll do about a dozen exhibitions each year. We've got 2 galleries, this one here, another one across the street. So we're doing exhibitions and basically trying to bring photographers together to have conversations, to share work, to be part of the photo community that was so important to me and that really got me going when I was a young man.
Where do you find artists you want to show?
It's, I don't have one answer for that. A lot of it is people recommending, people that we know that we've worked with, recommending other photographers, saying, hey, I saw this great project. It's relevant to what you're doing. We have a big network in Latin America, so we do show a lot of work from all over the Caribbean and Latin America. But we've shown, I think, a number of good projects from Africa, from Europe. We're open to everything. But a lot of it is word of mouth. Sometimes people just, cold call me or email me, send me a project. We've got a lot of photo editors that, we are in touch with, involved with, and they sometimes say, hey, I've got a great project. I think it would be right for you. So I would say a lot of it's just word of mouth, and we've always got our eyes open. We're always looking for good projects. We do, we are kind of a community-based gallery. So we look for things generally that we think are relevant to the Bronx. There are certain things that we haven't touched. People will bring me a beautiful project from China in the 1960s. It's a beautiful project, but frankly, it's not going to play. I wouldn't say that it won't play well. It's not going to draw a good crowd in the Bronx. Unfortunately, it's just not. So, there's certain things. There are certain things that are more relevant to what we do here. And most of our community here in the Bronx is Spanish speaking. So, everything that we do is bilingual. Again, I want to be clear, like, we don't only do Latin America. We do all kinds of stuff, we've worked with the Photo Market Workshop in South Africa. We've worked with, the Magnum Project from North Africa in the Middle East. So we've shown all this stuff, but we probably do have a bias for the Caribbean, South and Central.
How did you end up in the Bronx?
I used to come as a kid. My family was here. My grandparents and aunts and uncles came here from Russia around 1800. And so I used to come as a child and was always kind of intrigued and fascinated with the Bronx. And in the 1980s, I met a beautiful young woman on 14th Street, and we began to get involved with each other. And she was from the Bronx, and I ended up coming up here. We lived together for a while, and one thing led to another, so I'm still here. I've been in and out of the Bronx for about 40 years. So
Wow, very nice.
yeah. So.
Is there like a dream project for you for this center?
A dream project. I think, I would say no. I would say our dream project is really to further, concern documentary photography for lack of a better term. We do have, I think we're proud that we have 5 or 6 places around the world that are started based on the BDC. People have come here. They've seen what we do. Some of them have stayed for weeks or even months and kind of studied what we've done. And then they've gone back. There's a place in Colombia. There's a place in Portugal. There's a place in Ghana in West Africa. So there's a number of places out there. They're not named, they don't have our name, obviously, but they're places that are directly, I think the project in Detroit with Kara Schaefer and Alan Chin, they got their inspiration here. So there's we've had a lot of influence in terms of, it's like the tentacles go out, it's like a spider web, and you try to put something good together and it goes out into the world. So I think what we're trying to do is just keep that going. We'd love to open another location. We're looking at some small towns up in New England where we might be able to open another location if we could pull the money together. What we do changes lives. I mean, photojournalism and documentary work changes lives. I don't want to, put on the dog too much, but, I was a teenage father, working in a transmission shop, when I was 18, 19 years old. I had a kid and was kind of in a dead end. And, photography just gave me the world. I was able to work in 40, 50 countries for the New York Times. I mean, that's, I was on the front line of history. I mean, that's what photographers do. And it's incredible. And really, we just want to pass that on. I want to get another generation of young people out there with their cameras bearing witness, basically.
Thank you. That's fantastic. And I think the photographic community needs people like you and the center to be doing this, because
Thanks.
It takes a lot of energy and a lot of passion. And I can hear it and feel it from talking with you. So thank you.
Yeah, it's a privilege. And, for the most part, we enjoy it. We have, I mean, to get, to get up every morning and interact with photographers and print photos and hang shows and have conversations. I mean, it doesn't get better than that.
Absolutely. I do like the idea. I mean, I know this isn't what you're doing, but I love that, like, the Bronx Documentary Center is the franchise, where like you're licensing the model to like create more non-for-profit photo centers throughout the world. Not from a profit standpoint, but it just, the image of having a 7-Eleven, but it's the photo center, and you walk, it's just like dark room, 99-cent developers on tap, but
exactly. I mean, I think that's it. I think it works. I think this works. It gets people together and have conversations about current events, about politics, about social issues. And it works in the Bronx, and it'll work in any town or any city in America. There's nothing exclusive about the Bronx. This is, it's a very simple model. Sometimes people say, oh, wow, that's so complicated. It's not that complicated. You put pictures on the wall, you open up events to the public, you get people in talking together. You do the best you can to provide resources. We've got a lot of cameras that we loan out to photographers in our programs. Thanks to actually Fujifilm has really helped us with that. We've got a big darkroom. We've got 17 enlargers. We've got one of the biggest analog programs in New York City. So a lot of our students are shooting film every day, and they're in there making prints. And not every place can offer all of that, but the main thing is documentary photography works. It changes the world, and we've just gotta keep it going. Simple as
Very
that.
cool.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of obviously ICP's been doing a great job for a long time. There's up in Kingston, New York, the Woodstock Center moved to Kingston, and apparently have an amazing program and amazing space. Yeah,
Brian was just on the show. He was
beautiful.
on like 2 weeks ago. Yeah, maybe I'm up in Beacon now. I left Brooklyn 7 years ago, so we're not too far from Kingston,
Yeah.
and I was really happy to see Woodstock move south.
Right, right. And really, they were, and, not to toot our horn too much, but they called me. I mean, they called me before they did that, and they said, we want to do what you're doing. They said, we're here in Woodstock. It's great, but we're not reaching, we see the audience that you're reaching. We see that you're reaching young people, you're reaching, poor people, immigrants, a whole diverse, Black, white, Latino, Asian, everybody. And they said, we want to do what you're doing, and we're going to move to Kingston. So, we helped to inspire that. But there's I think the Kappa Center up in I forget what the Kappa Center is, but they opened up a gallery in the town where Robert Kappa's actually buried, somewhere up in Westchester, I think. So there's a bunch of places out there that are carrying the torch.
Brian said that there's a list of like non-for-profit like photo organizations and centers somewhere that he was gonna send to me that I want, because I know some of them, I know about Silver Eye, and I know,
Right,
CBW and Photo Fest, and but I don't think I know everybody.
right,
Um,
right. There's a place up in Rochester. Is that I don't know if you know the place up there. They've got a great workshop up in I think it's in Rochester.
yeah, Lightworks. Yeah.
Lightworks. Yeah. So, it's not what it was when I first came to New York. I mean, there were photo bookstores everywhere. There were photo galleries everywhere. It's never going to be the good old days, but it is what it is. And, there's a lot of great stuff, and, the good old days were not so easy, they were great, but if you wanted to show your work to an editor, you had to print it out, put it in a portfolio, go to the post office, send it off, wait 2 weeks or a month for it to come back, usually with a no thanks. So the facility, the ease with which we're able to disseminate things and reach out and partner with people around the world is unbelievable. I mean, it's really, there's a lot of advantages of where we are today.
Absolutely. Do you still shoot for yourself? Do you have any time?
I shoot quite often. Yeah. Though, as I get older, I turned 60 not too long ago, and you get to that age and you start to go through your old work. So, I just scanned a whole binder of negatives from 1989, and I found this, march it was a homeless march from New York City to Washington, D.C. And I had completely forgotten about this. This was like a month of my life where I was, on the road, sleeping on the ground, living and working closely with about 200 homeless individuals. And, you start to find this old work, and it has, I think some of it still has resonance, not all of it, but I think, I've got, as I said, I've got years and years of work from the Iraq War that I'm editing and trying to pull together a book for that. Yeah, I still shoot, here and there, but not a lot. I'm more interested in my older work, and I'm more interested in what other people are doing today. I simply don't have the time to, I'd love to be back in the Congo or in Syria or any number of places, but I don't have that capacity now. And so, partly it's about promoting other work, and there's great work being done out there.
A lot of the directors that I've talked to mention how much time is taken up with like fundraising to like support. Do you find that?
I mean, we live or die. I mean, that's how we keep the doors open. You don't fundraise, you're going down. It's as simple as that. You've got to be fundraising all the time and thinking about money all the time, and cranking out the grants, and cultivating people, whatever that means, and trying to just it's just life in the big city. It's there's no way around it. It's it's an expensive city. We do things very cheap here. We build all of our frames in-house. We print everything in-house, nothing gets sent out. So we do things for, probably 10 cents on the dollar compared to a gallery downtown, but it's still, you've got to pay people. We've got healthcare for the employees, rents, utilities, etc. I mean, it costs money to keep a place open, as you know.
For
So
sure.
yeah, we're fundraising constantly.
I mean, it's good because I mean, there's places that, they've got the director and then everyone else is the volunteer. So it's awesome that you've got enough
Yeah.
coming in that.
We do. Yeah. We've got, 4 or 5 people on staff that are pretty much full-time, that have benefits, that, are doing well. We do spend an inordinate amount of time. I complain about this all the time. We'll have 6 people raising money and 2 people, doing exhibitions. I wish it was the other way. I'd like to have 6 people on the exhibitions, but, it's hard. It's hard to run down money, and I was kind of like a young, revolutionary, eat the rich, then I got to know rich people. Actually, a lot of them are great. A lot of them want to help out. They get up in the morning. Yeah, I've got a lot of money. I want to help out. I want to do something positive. So, you got to find those people, show them what you're doing. And, if they get on board or not, it's up to them. But,
Yep.
Yeah. So I've adjusted some of my attitudes because, same with the government. It was like, fuck the government. Now I'm writing government grants and trying to money, and it's the government does a lot of great things. They help keep organizations like us alive. So,
Yep.
you know,
Hope it continues.
I do too.
um,
Okay, no comment.
do you do any like benefits? Like, do you do like print sales or any?
We've tried over the years. Yeah, we've tried. I'll be honest with you, it's tricky. We did a big benefit yearly fundraiser. We did it probably 6 or 7 years in a row, and as much money as we spent on it, that's how much we raised. So, we always broke even. We could never, we spent 10,000, we raised 10,000. Then we spent 20,000, we raised 20,000. So it's hard, it's tough. I think, I see these nonprofits in Manhattan, and they get a big ballroom, and they bring in $500,000 or something. I mean, that's incredible, but I don't know how they do it. But we don't, we're a small organization in the Bronx. We've never been able to kind of crack that nut, unfortunately. But
Yeah.
we a lot of what we do is through volunteers. We've still got, right now we probably have 12 or 15 volunteers that come in every week and help keep this place going. They help with the library, they gallery sit, they do all kinds of stuff. And then, they get free darkroom usage, and they get different things, different perks, free workshops and things. But we have a group of volunteers that really has been crucial for us.
So you've got a gallery, you've got a library, you've got wet dark rooms, you've
Right.
got workshops, you're traveling. Is there
Yeah.
anything you're not doing?
We're doing a fair amount. We're starting to do quite a bit of video. Our teenagers asked for a video class, so we've added a video class, and we've got an adult video class as well. It's sort of a year-long fellowship, Bronx Film Fellows, BDC Film Fellows. So, yeah, we're doing a lot of things. I mean, I think we'd love to do more audio, more storytelling. I think storytelling is involved in everything we do, but I'd love to. I think audio storytelling is really important, because I think it kind of gives you a foundation, maybe the best foundation to lay your photos over, to lay video over to. If you can tell a story through audio, like, you've got a foundation that you can do everything with. And we'd love to do more of that. I think that's something we hope to do in the future.
Yeah, I was so anti-audio as a photographer for so many years, and motion, because it was just too many tools, and the quality of sound and the capture and just the headache that it brought into play. And after I hired the right people and started working with them, I, you know, learned and self-taught on the job how to capture our audio successfully, and then also how to start editing it and putting it together. And yeah, and it's such a good um foundation, like you said, to be using. And you don't have to have it, but it is really helpful when you do.
Yeah, I agree. I think, I saw some stuff that Brian Storm did early, probably in the early 2000s. And I think that was the first time where I said, oh, wow, yeah, this makes, I get it. Until I saw what MediaStorm was doing, I think I didn't quite get it. But then, the other thing is working with young people. A lot of young people are getting their information in fragments. They're on TikTok or they're on Instagram, but they're seeing these 10 seconds here, 5 seconds here. The way that their stories are told are very disjointed, and having them sit down and do an audio piece, you can't fake it. Like, it just has to make sense. You've got to do a beginning, middle, end. There has to be, tension and resolution and, action. And, you've got to build a story that makes sense through audio. Sometimes with photos, you can move things around in different ways and, that's great, but audio has to make sense. And I think we're trying to teach more storytelling. And so, as I said, I'm hoping we can get more into audio in the future and use it in conjunction with the photos, in conjunction with the video.
Have you ever done a project with the similar to like the Eddie Adams workshop where you've done a retreat?
I've never been up there. I knew Eddie Adams a bit, when I was a young man, and I wasn't a big fan of his, to be honest with you. And maybe word got back to them. I've never been invited. So I'm told they do great stuff, and I mean, obviously Eddie passed on quite some years ago, and he was an amazing photographer. I mean, the work he did in Vietnam is just unbelievable, and elsewhere. But we don't need to get into the details. I wasn't a fan, and I think I made that known at some point. But but I've got friends who go up there, Todd Heisler, and I've got friends who go up there all the time, and they love it, and they've had really great experiences.
Yeah, exactly. I was never invited. I feel like there was a cap at some point about you had to have not been in the industry for a certain amount of time. It was like up to like 5 years, and like the work got known like a little bit too late. It was like 8-10 years in, and so it's just like, all right. And I keep hoping that they'll ask me to come in and like teach a workshop, but they have enough like, those names that you were dropping, major famous photographers that are
Right.
able and willing. So
Yeah. We're doing a lot of summer stuff up in Maine. I grew up mostly in Maine. I was born up there, and still have family up there. So we're taking our kids up to Maine. We're taking our teachers to Maine. We're slowly expanding on the Maine coast, and in a place called Rockland, just because I've got a good base there. It's a great place to photograph, and pretty much everybody you talk to says, sure, you want to take my picture or do a project, no problem. It's a very easy place to work. And so we're slowly expanding up there in the summer and doing more and more workshops. We're planning those out right now.
awesome.
Yeah.
That sounds like a lot of
That's-
fun.
Especially for, people from the Bronx. It's great to have the best of both worlds. The Bronx is great. It's the most, packed, vibrant, gritty, fascinating place. And then, Maine is sort of the other extreme. So, I think you get the best of both worlds if you can go back and forth.
Are the kids asking about AI? Are they like interested in it, or how is it for them?
I'm very, we should probably delete this part of the podcast, but I'm not a fan. I'm just not a fan. I joke and I say, all of our kids can use AI, but first they have to be able to write a solid paragraph, subjects, verbs, adjectives, the whole thing. And, most of them can't, and, through no fault of their own. Yeah, you can use AI, but first show me that you can shoot a roll of Tri-X on an old Nikon and everything is exposed and in focus, and that's hard. I'm sorry. I think AI is easy. AI does it for you. I don't want a computer doing things for our kids. I want our kids to learn to do it. You lock in the focus. You're going to decide where the focus is. You're going to decide, you're going to understand your meter. You're going to understand the light, the shadows. You're going to decide what your exposure is. You're going to decide how that negative is going to work out for you. You're going to go in the dark room. You're going to do all these steps. I don't want a machine doing it for our kids. I think it's great. Other people are doing it. I'm sure they're doing fascinating things. It's just, I'm a traditionalist, and I'm very open about that. I'm a traditionalist. So,
Oh, good.
which, may be a blind spot. Some people say, oh, so I've got a siren going by here. Excuse me. I take a lot of heat. A lot of people say, well, these are all new tools. You should embrace the new tools and get out there and use the new tools. I mean, I think other people can do that, but I'm interested in, the traditions that I feel worked for me. And I also think a big part of what we do, and really a big part of why we started, it wasn't about photography. A big part of what we do is about helping people to understand what is real, what is true, what is honest in the world. We're very much against disinformation and misinformation. We've done exhibitions about this. We've done exhibitions about image manipulation, about, too much Photoshop, moving objects around. We don't allow any of that. We're very much about this is real. And I think that's a real crisis in America. I think it's a crisis in the world right now. I think people have lost touch, again, maybe through no fault of their own. They've lost touch, or they don't really understand what's real. If I talk to, 5 people out on the street, they tell me 5 different things about the same subject. They're getting their information. I'm sorry, many people are not media literate. They're getting bombarded with all kinds of, false images, fabricated images, doctored images, AI images. I just saw some stuff today, so I think it's overwhelming. I think it's really damaging our society. I'm not going to be able to stop the tidal wave, but if I'm working with 100 kids, those 100 kids are going to know how to do it right. So
thank you for that.
Yeah.
And it's interesting that you point that out, because it's really true. And I hadn't thought about it, that like I have the tools and the, just like the visual knowledge to recognize
Right.
most of the manipulation. Sometimes, every once in a while it tricks me. But there are plenty of people that are not asking the question. If they're seeing it in a place that they are, comfortable accepting as this is the reality.
Exactly. I talk to, I'm surprised. I talk to sometimes, people who have a pretty good education, and they'll say, oh, I saw this thing on Instagram and they're showing me. And I'm like, that's obviously false. Like, you can't see that, look at the shadows. The shadows don't line up. They're from 2 different directions. Oh, really? I never thought of that, So, I mean, these are people who you would think would know better. And It's happening all across this country. I think it's a disaster.
There was an argument going on one of the photo groups about this image that had been posted, and the photographer was claiming it wasn't AI. And I zoomed in on it, and there was just, artifacts in there that were like so not lens based. And I'm just like, this is not a JPEG glitch. It's like, there's no way that this reflection was happening.
Right.
And, and I wasn't sure what the point of lying about it was. And they never, I stepped away. I don't know how it got resolved, but for me, it was so clear that this was not real.
Right.
But they were saying it's 100% true. And I just like, I'm sorry, but it's like, but I'll send you the raw file. It's like that even doesn't matter, because you can, generate and change the coding. That's not
exactly.
Um,
But if you pull one of your negatives from 25 years ago, if there is a speck of dust on that negative, you can see it. If there is a tiniest scratch on that negative, there's no way to fake that negative. I'm sorry, there's just no way. I mean, I'm sure the Soviets found some way to rephotograph things and make new negatives or something. Maybe that, who knows? But 99%, you can look at any negative I've ever done. Not 100%, I will say 100%, and for sure that negative has never been touched. That is the original image.
Yeah.
I'm sure AI is going to do some great things in medicine or who knows what, but personally, I don't feel a need for AI in photography.
It's damaging within the sense of the image being factual.
Where's the integrity? I mean, what's real? Do you know what's real? I mean, do you even know that you're looking at me right now? Maybe I'm gonna,
We've been having this conversation, and I didn't want to ask. I don't want to be rude. Like, are you AI? It's like, I mean, you're pretty convincing. You sound real. This might be your avatar. I respect all.
Thank you.
Pixel based or not, you seem like a nice guy.
Right. Well, I've programmed the computer that way. Yeah. So, anyway, like I said, I'm a traditionalist. Make a good solid print, get it on the wall. And there's a beauty, in a traditional. It's funny. Sometimes the young photographers will see a 16 by 20 shot on Tri-X 35 millimeter, and they'll be like, oh, it's so grainy, And it's like, yeah, that's the beauty of it, that's the silver. You're seeing the grain, and you see some of these digital images, and they're just so perfect that to me they have no character.
Yep.
I love the grain. I love I love the scratches. I love the dust. I love all of it. So
It's the flaws that makes it authentic.
for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sure. And also, just generally, I'm a little off topic here, but certainly our younger students, our teenagers love working with their hands. And I think many people, many parents don't realize that their teens or their kids have really not done much with their hands the way that maybe your generation or my generation, we grew up doing all kinds of things. And a lot of young people today, they tell me this, I've never, I have them help me build a frame. Okay. You're going to drill a hole. They're like, oh my God, I've never drilled a hole. That's incredible. You're going to put a screw in here. They've never done anything, and they love it. I mean, it's transformational. They go in and they develop their film, and it's like, wow, look at this. They're holding it in their hands. So it's, the magic never goes away. It's wonderful, wonderful. It's just wonderful. And it's so therapeutic to do things with their hands. And I think that applies to everything.
It is really true. And I think that it's one of the reasons that there's like a resurgence of silver-based photography, is that magic is
Sure.
missing from like our kids' generation, because they've grown up with the digital image. And so now, having an actual like instant, pop out of a Polaroid camera or Fuji, and also
Yeah.
going into the wet darkroom and seeing a print develop in a chemical bath is experiencing magic. And it was for me, like 30 plus years ago.
Right.
Um,
Right. And it never gets old. And some people say it's equivalent to the resurgence in LP, people having vinyl records, and that's, I don't know, maybe it is, but it's
yeah.
you can certainly do it easier and cheaper digitally, but a lot of young people don't want to. They actually want to hold the album, and they want to see the liner notes, and it's fun. It's cool. It's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was one part of the analog thing that I never got onto. I was already I had the Discman that was like, ran on 3 AA batteries that I would like stuck under my armpit so it wouldn't skip while I was walking. But
Right. Exactly. Yeah, the Discman. I forgot about that. There's a fascinating story. The guy that invented the Walkman, I think he was German or Swiss, and he invented the prototype for the Walkman, I think in the 1970s. And he sent it to Sony, he sent it to, every JVC, sent it to every large audio company in the world. And fortunately for him, he saved all the correspondence, and they sent him back these letters, and they said there's no possible scenario in which people would want to be doing activities and listening to music simultaneously. No application for this. And then later they stole it from him and created the Sony Walkman. And he got, I forget the lawsuit. He got hundreds and hundreds and maybe billions of dollars from them, through a lawsuit, because he'd saved that. But looking at that early correspondence where they said nobody will ever want to do physical activities and listen to music simultaneously was fascinating.
that must be in the list of like, the 10 top, biggest business mistakes.
Right.
Um,
Right. Absolutely.
oops.
Absolutely. Yeah. 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 He sent it all over the world. But, I mean, I can't say shooting film every day is practical. Frankly, it's expensive. A roll of film, is probably $7, $8 now. And you've got to have access to a dark room. But that's why you need the community. If you have a community and a community place where you can volunteer and use a darkroom for free, things like that, it's makes the difference. But digital is wonderful. Not knocking digital. I love it. A lot of our students shoot digital. It's enabled them. It's so easy and fast and cheap. It's a great learning tool. You see your mistakes immediately, which is great. You don't have to wait a few days and develop film, and then you can't remember what your settings were. With digital, you see it right away. You know what you're doing. Great learning tool. And the quality has come so far. I remember the early cell phones. I remember when I went to Afghanistan, and just after 9/11, I bought the first kind of pretty decent Nikon. I think it was $8,000, and it was the first camera that would take a 1 megabyte file. And that was considered enormous. You had a 1 megabyte file. Before that, it was all, 400K, 500K. And you couldn't shoot in low light. You could only shoot really in daylight with it. But it was a revolution at the time.
Was that the Nikon that looked like a brick? that like stuck out like so massive?
That was the previous one.
That was the previous one. Okay.
Yeah, they came out with one, I can't tell you, I think in 2001, they came out with one that it did take the older Nikon lenses, but it also took the new autofocus lenses. Some of the first autofocus lenses I'd ever used, certainly. And though, Minolta had autofocus lenses back in the 90s on their film cameras. But you could go out and do good work with this. They had a 70-200, they had a 28-80. I don't think it was a full frame. It wasn't quite full frame, but you could go out and do real work, and it looked pretty good if you had enough light. Obviously there was no, 12,000 ISO. You weren't going to go and shoot by candlelight, but you could work in daylight, and you were getting a 1 megabyte file, which at that time we thought was wonderful. I mean, we were blown away. Somewhere I've got the first card. It's a CF card, and I paid $1,000 for it, and it would hold 1 gigabyte. And I needed it because I was in Afghanistan, I was in West Africa. We didn't have a lot of electricity. It was very hard you couldn't download photos from a lot of cards. So you needed a big card that would hold a lot of images. And I paid $1,000 for this 1 gigabyte card. And someday I'm going to have Jeff at PhotoCare find the receipt, and I'm going to frame it and put it on the wall. It's like a 1 gigabyte, today we would laugh at that, but yeah, the technology's come so far.
Very much. Yeah.
So far.
For good and for bad. So Michael, thank you so much. I think I went over everything. I guess Bill asked you, how can people help?
You can check us out at bronxdoc.org. It's Bronx Documentary Center on Instagram. Most of the stuff's on Instagram, or you can go to our website. Just get involved. Come to a show. Ask for Mike. I'm almost always here. We've got a show coming up April 3rd. We've got our student show in June. July, we've got our Latin American Photo Festival. I think we've got 10 or 11 countries involved in that. And that's always great because it's the whole neighborhood. We do the parks, the churches, the playgrounds. We do photos up everywhere. That's probably the second week in July. So keep an eye out. Just reach out to us, get involved if you're interested. If you want to use the darkroom, rent the darkroom. We rent the darkroom. I think it's $15 an hour, which is pretty reasonable, but, just keep in touch, become part of our community, and let us know how we can become part of your community.
Thank you. Well, thank you so much. This has been a lot of fun. I really enjoyed meeting with you and hearing your stories, and I'll see you in the Bronx.
Good. I look forward to it. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, everybody.